got into this after working at the management division of the Department of Public Works for 14 years and being involved in a number of different projects here at the RDF. And it wasn't until my predecessor, Gordon Martin, announced his retirement that it really started to, eat away at me. It's something that I might be really interested in. And I've loved it for the past 2 years. It's a fantastic facility, and the interactions with the residents are always interesting at the least, but for the most part, very, very pleasurable. Responsible for the entire facility, for the budgeting of the facility, for the capital improvements to the facility, making sure material actually leaves the facility. Our primary function is to make sure that to prevent the spread of disease. And so we need to have a clean operation that moves trash throughout the facility. After that, we're focused on the environmental and on the business side of the operations. So how can we reduce the cost for taxpayers for the town? So recycling and all the products that we collect here, they're essentially commodities. And so we're trying to reduce either the amount that we pay for them or maximize the amount of revenue that we generate from them. And so they're adapting to market conditions on a daily basis. Right now we're facing some struggles with actually recycling glass, believe it or not. It was the first product that we began recycling here, but recently, because packaging is moving away from glass, we're trying to find additional outlets for it. And so it's actually a struggle in New England right now to recycle glass. So aside from the care facility and the management of the equipment and the buildings, of course, trying to encourage residents to recycle and see what's next and how can we do a better job of what we're doing. So back in the late 60s, this building right here was a trash incinerator. And so residents would come into the garage bays here, drop their trash, that material was picked up and put into an ash incinerator and buried on site. And what happened is that shortly after that, there were restrictions on air quality with the Clean Air Act, and then wetlands restrictions. In our 88-acre site, we couldn't operate it as a national landfill any longer, couldn't operate the incinerator, so the town had to decide to start shipping waste outside of town. So closed the facility in terms of the trash operation here, but then we started hauling trash outside of town, and that's essentially how we've been operating ever since. Alongside that in the early 70s, when those restrictions were put into place, there was a grassroots movement to start recycling in town. So this is about 1971. There was a group called Action for Ecology that started recycling glass on a volunteer basis, using their resources as well as high school students to bring glass bottles up to the Coca-Cola plant that was on 128. Quickly after that, recycling started to grow more and more in town, and we started to recycle cardboard, different types of paper, steel, tin, and aluminum, and we've basically just been growing that way ever since. Another major shift that happened was in the mid-90s, when the town decided to make a substantial investment in the baling operation. And the baler is essentially what's called an export quality baler, which allows us to meet the minimum shipping requirements for going overseas on large cargo ships. And it's a really, really important part of our history here, and it symbolizes the way that not only can town government, residents, and employees and volunteers all work together to establish something that's really environmentally friendly, but it's economically the most responsible thing to do with our recycling. And so right now we market and sell about $400,000 a year in recyclables. And why don't I take you down to the baling operation? You can see it for yourself. So this is where the smokestack used to be. And if you can picture it, you can see that there's this addition onto the building, and that's exactly where the smokestack was. And again, it was in the mid-90s when we had a major reconstruction project here. The smokestack came down and the baler was put in. And I like to liken it to the phoenix rising from the ashes, and we have the fantastic operation that we have here today. So materials put onto the materials put on to the conveyor belt. There's a quality control station up at top to remove any additional contaminants. That material's then compressed, put into bales, and moved onto tractor trailers that leave the facility. That tractor trailer may go to Canada, may go to China, may go to New York. We essentially market the materials to who's ever paying the most for them.
It's a long drive to China.
It's a long drive to China. So that's when it goes over on a cargo ship, on the slow boat to China, if you will. So we market materials through the baler, like cardboard, paper, newspaper, plastics, steel, tin, aluminum. Those are the materials that go over the baler. Some materials we also move loose. Glass is something that you cannot bale, so that goes loose. And some of the bulkier items like light iron, metals, that way we also move loose. So this is the residential side of the operation. This is where, again, we call this the source separated model, and we've got many different sorts. So we've got 6 different sorts for paper, 4 sorts for plastic, 3 sorts for glass, and you can see that we've got extensive signage. Try to give the best definitions of sample items that can be included, items that should be recycled elsewhere, and items that should be put in the trash. And so this is really, we have to give a lot of credit to our residents who spend 10 to 15 minutes along this wall recycling all their different recyclables, separating out all their different recyclables so that we can market those as any of the individual material types or mix them when it makes sense as well. For the most part, the residents do a good job of being attentive to what they're putting in there, and I think our signage helps with that as well. But that's definitely one of the things that we always have to keep on top of is making sure that we keep the contaminants out. We have a very low threshold for contaminants because they can result in a load being rejected at the recycler. And so we really have to make sure that we keep the contaminants out of the recycling. We have a quality control technician and our employees who take those contaminants out to make sure that the real core contaminants aren't included. Like, common misconceptions are that rubber might be able to go in with the plastics, which it cannot. We always have to keep that out. Trash, of course, cannot be in any of the items. Food can't be in any of the items. So we do take time to take those out. So please keep your recycling as clean as possible. So this is our special waste area. This is for items that are more sort of hazardous or caustic in nature. So waste oil, paint, mercury products, batteries, and so it's very important to keep all these items out of the landfill. So we've got these areas that are here that help us do that. Another special waste item are televisions and computers. Anything with a screen we want to keep out of the landfill. There are nasty products that are in there. We want to keep those out. Okay. So the healthcare equipment is something we started a few years back with donating crutches, canes, as well as wheelchairs. So please feel free to take what you need from here and drop off anything you need as well. We want to encourage the reuse of these items. Just please don't bring us any wooden crutches or canes. This is also our textiles area. And so, again, textiles, about 85% of the textiles that can be recycled are thrown away in this country. And people think that if it's not good enough for them, then it's not good enough for anybody else. But there are secondary and tertiary markets for those materials. So we want to make sure that people, if it's torn, if it's stained, if you've got one shoe, if it's an old backpack that you're not using, please bring it to the textiles area because it can be made, again, it can be sent to third world countries or it can be made into rags and reused here.
We get everything ready for everybody to come and take. So it's a take it and leave it. Take it or leave it.
So what kind of stuff do people leave?
Every possible thing you can think of, and even things you can't think of. I sort the table of clothing, and whatever they needed to do, they'll put me there and I'll do it.
It looks very busy. Is it normally like this?
Oh yeah, everybody loves this place. It's the most popular place in Wellesley.
You ever see anything you would like for yourself?
I try not to take anything home with me unless it can fit in my pocket. There's tons of stuff here for everybody.
So this is the residential trash area. So after you've done all your recycling, this is where you come to drop off your trash. The trash is essentially compacted into these containers and then eventually loaded into that building where it's then put into larger 100-yard trailers and then shipped to landfill. So it's last in the facility because it's the last thing that we want you to do, really. We want you to do all the recycling and reuse first before you go to the trash area. Items like diapers or plastic bags or one of the other items that we're trying to get out of that waste stream is food. So we have a pilot program right now, open up to 600 households in order to get food out of the trash stream. And why don't I show you that area too? This is our food waste drop-off program. We're in a pilot phase right now where it's only open to 600 households. And what we're doing, we're taking that food waste out of the waste stream and it's actually going to what's called an anaerobic digester, where it's ultimately converted into energy and used on site at that facility. And so we're generating about 6,000 kilowatts a month of usage, which equates to about 2 households a month. And this is our yard waste area. This is where residents and contractors get rid of brush, leaves and grass. Ultimately, the leaves and grass we make into a compost product, which is opened up for the residents to shovel as much as they would like to, and the brush gets ground off into wood chips and taken off-site and typically used as a soil amendment. Early on, from the environmental aspect of the operation, recycling was always something important to me. Like it is, I think, typical with a lot of people, got introduced in the mid-'80s with the resurgence of Earth Day and the education programs that also happened within the public school system. And recycling was just something that we did. And now we're trying to leverage that to actually create it, instill it into more action. I think we need a little bit more motivation to do the right thing with recycling. I'm afraid that we're a little bit too commonplace with it and relaxed with it and not thinking about it enough. So I see that as an important initiative.